The asphalt stretched, cracked, and scarred, a black ribbon unwinding under the growl of the engine. I kept my eyes fixed on the horizon, just beyond the faded outline of a distant billboard advertising something long forgotten. Inside the cab, it was a familiar symphony of vibrations, groans of stressed metal, and the ceaseless, deep thrum of the engine. It was my world, this rolling steel coffin, this fortress on wheels. My name's Jake, and this rig, this was everything we had left. Then again, things never really stayed the same, did they? Truth is, I heard something, a whisper. Not the wind, not the usual grind of the transmission. It was softer, like a breath, right by my ear. I frowned, flexing my jaw. Must be exhaust leaking, or maybe the seals were going bad. Everything was always going bad. I reached down, twisted the knob for the dash controls, hoping to drown out whatever phantom noise was creeping in. The wind, it howled, tried to chew through the armored glass, but the sound, that whisper, it felt like it just clung. "Damn thing," I muttered, mostly to myself. My hand went to the comms headset, an old military model scavenged from God knows where. Gave it a tap. Just checking. You know how it is. You hear something, you gotta make sure it's not you. The thing is, the headset crackled to life, and there it was again. Clearer this time. Not static. Not a breath. Words. 2 words, repeated. Seek, find. Just those, over and over, like someone was right there, whispering into the microphone, right into my ear. I flinched, jerked my hand away, hitting the side of the door. What the hell? I ripped the headset off, checked the mic for the cargo hold. Dead silence. Just the faint, rhythmic breathing of the others, asleep or trying to be. Nothing. No one. Just static. I said that out loud, tried to convince myself. But the word, seek, it hung there, inside my head. Even with the comms totally off, it was still there, bouncing around in my skull. Like it had found its way in and just stayed. God damn it. We were rolling past what used to be a town, or what was left of one. Skeletons of houses, like rotted teeth. The road was littered with husks of cars, twisted metal. And then, from the darker alleys, they started to appear. Shapes. Gaunt things, moving slow, dragging their feet. Not the quick, frantic runners we'd seen before. These were different. Seekers. They didn't look up at the sound of the truck. Not with their eyes, anyway. Their heads just tilted, like they were listening. One of them, it stopped, right there in the middle of a collapsing street. Head tipped way back, an angle no human neck should allow. And then it raised a hand, a bony finger, and pointed, right at the truck. I felt it then, the whisper. It wasn't coming from outside. It was in my head. A cold, clear voice saying, "They hear, they know." My blood ran cold, felt like ice was churning in my veins. "No way," I growled, gritting my teeth. My foot slammed down on the accelerator. The engine roared, a deep-seated rumble that vibrated through the floorboards, up through my seat. They just smell the fuel, that's all. I pushed harder. The truck lunged forward, eating up the broken pavement. But the louder the engine got, the more they seemed to wake up. More seekers lurching out from the shadows of ruined buildings. They didn't chase us, they just stood there. All of them, turning their heads, facing the receding sound of our truck, like they were marking our location, like they were signaling. I looked in the rearview mirror, watched those twisted shapes disappear behind a plume of dust. But the feeling, that icy grip, it didn't leave. It stayed. I remembered the whispers. The truck, our only refuge, this rolling fort, it was drawing them in. Every roar of the engine, every clank of metal, it was a beacon, a death magnet. I eased off the gas, tried to keep the engine rumble as low as possible. My hand tightened on the dashboard, almost without thinking, a white-knuckled grip. From the back, a faint, weak giggle. A kid laughing. I thought, every sound could kill us. This is not going to work out. Later that night, we were holed up in what used to be an auto parts warehouse. Big place, rusted corrugated metal over everything. The air was thick with the smell of old oil and something else, something damp and earthy. My old combat boots crunched on scattered debris as I walked around the truck, checking the tires, giving the armored plating a once-over. I got down on one knee, inspecting the front left tire, and that's when I saw it. On the dirt floor, a line of small pebbles, arranged, not scattered. They formed a distinct arrow, sharp and clear, pointing directly at the main entrance of the warehouse, which was now sealed tight with a heavy chain and padlock. I looked around. No one else was awake. No one had been out here. Not from our group, anyway. My stomach lurched. The hair on my arm stood up. I didn't touch it, just stared at it for a long, quiet moment. The days that followed blurred into a monotonous cycle of driving and dread. I kept pushing, eyes constantly scanning the road, the mirrors, searching for anything out of place. We drove. We ate what little we had. Cracked protein bars, stale crackers. I made sure everyone got their share, but the portions got smaller each day. Had to be done. We were running low. Always running low. Sometimes, when the road was clear, when the engine was a steady hum, the whisper would return. Not the intercom this time, just inside. Like a thought forming. A slow, gentle chime, like bamboo wind chimes swaying in a breeze. But there were no wind chimes. Just the steel shell of the truck, the open road ahead. And the thought of those chimes, light and airy, felt so wrong, so terribly out of place in this brutal world. I tried to shake it off. Too many hours behind the wheel, not enough sleep, just noise, my mind playing tricks. I'd tell the others, everything shipshape, we'll be fine. But my voice felt flat, even to me. That stoic, pragmatic mask I wore was starting to crack. But the world outside, it wasn't letting up. We started seeing more of them. Seekers, lots of them. And they were different. They moved with a strange, deliberate purpose. Not the mindless shambling of the initial outbreaks. They seemed to anticipate our turns, to wait in places where the road narrowed. And the noise. The engine noise. It was like a dinner bell to them now. Inside the truck, the air grew thick with unspoken tension. Resources, they were a constant worry. The arguments started small. A spilled water bottle, a missing ration pack. Maria, she was one of the older women we'd picked up. Quiet, kept to herself. She had this old faded scarf she always wore. Lost it one night. Couldn't find it anywhere. Next morning, it was just there, on her bunk. Clean, neatly folded. But there was a small rip on the edge. A tear, I was sure, hadn't been on her old one. She didn't say anything, just clutched it. One evening, while we were eating, I noticed my spoon, an old metal thing, dented. I picked it up. It felt cold, colder than it should be in the cramped, warm truck. But then, as my fingers gripped it, it felt soft. Not really soft, but pliant, like butter. I stared at it, then looked at the wooden table we were eating off. It felt hard, like cold steel. I ran my fingers over the grain. It felt solid, yet alien. I shook my head, rubbed my eyes. Sleep deprivation, that's what it had to be. Then there was Ben. He'd been decent enough, but he started getting touchy, snapping at everyone for no reason, glaring into the shadows, muttering things I couldn't quite make out. It spread a kind of quiet fear in the back, a fear not of the things outside, but of each other. I found myself making hard choices, cutting rations even more. When we saw a broken-down car on the side of the road, someone waving a tattered flag, I kept driving, didn't even slow down, couldn't risk it. We had to keep moving. The gas, the fuel, was too precious. Every time I did something like that, something practical, something necessary, a cold knot formed in my gut. Felt like I was losing a piece of myself, shedding it like old skin. One afternoon, I was trying to tighten a loose lug nut on the rear wheel. The whole assembly was vibrating, making too much noise. I had my wrench. Sweat was dripping into my eyes, stinging them. I leaned into it, grunted, straining every muscle in my arm. The nut wouldn't budge, not an inch. I pulled back, frustrated, breathing hard. And then, as I stood there, defeated, I saw it. The lug nut. It turned, slowly, on its own. Not much, just a millimeter. But it twisted, almost like it was taunting me. I stared at it, my mouth suddenly dry. The attack came when we were on a narrow stretch of road, winding through the skeletal remains of a forgotten town. The way ahead was choked. A pileup of wrecked vehicles, metal twisted into grotesque shapes. We had to slow down, barely moving. That's when they hit. Dozens of them. Runners, fast and feral, scrambling over the husks of cars. Seekers, clawing at the armored plating. The truck became a drum, a cacophony of screeching metal, guttural growls, and the desperate screams from the cargo hold. The roar of the engine, I floored it again, desperate, hoping to ram our way through. But it was just a magnet, pulling them in closer. The whole damn thing shook, shuddered like a metal beast dying. I saw it then, a silhouette lunging at the side window. The one that had already taken a hit had a hairline crack running through it. A hand, gaunt and rotting, rammed through the crack. It grabbed. A scream. Maria. Her face contorted in sheer terror. She was so close to the window, watching the chaos outside with wide, desperate eyes. The reanimated gripped her, tugged hard. It happened so fast, too fast. I heard the glass shatter, the terrible tearing sound. And then Maria was gone, yanked out, through the opening, disappeared into the swirling mass of hungry things. I couldn't do anything, just drove, blindly, powering through. My foot was welded to the accelerator. The vehicle lurched and groaned, smashed, crushed. Everything was screaming. And then, through it all, through the din of the engine, the rending metal, the fading echoes of Maria's last scream, there it was, the whisper. It wasn't just from outside now. It was rising, From inside the truck, a chorus, 100 voices, dry and scraping, repeating her name, Maria, Maria, a cruel, knocking sound that burrowed into my ear, into my very bones. I slammed the truck sideways against a rusted bus, tearing a fresh gouge in the armor. It gave us a moment. I looked out the driver's side window, into the hell outside, and I saw it. An abomination. One of the rare, truly twisted ones. It wasn't like the others. Huge, its arms long, like black, gnarled tentacles, clawing at the steel shell, trying to peel it open. The headlights, they were shining right on it, catching its horrifying form. Then the lights started to flicker. Not a malfunction. It was it, the abomination. It was doing something, controlling them. The headlights pulsed, then turned a deep blood red, and then they just died, plunging us into near darkness. In the sudden gloom, the abomination recoiled, and for a split second, in the faint ambient light, its face, it was familiar. A face I'd seen in an old faded photo, Maria's photo, one she kept tucked in her pocket. It was her face, her features twisted, decayed, but undeniably hers. And then it smiled, a wide, impossible grin, full of too many teeth. It turned its head, and those long black tentacles, they didn't tear at the outside anymore. They simply threaded themselves back into the steel, slid into the broken seams, the ripped sections of the truck's plating, vanished, not a trace, like the metal itself had swallowed them. I drove on, the silence in the cab heavier than anything I'd ever known. The engine growled, but it sounded sickly now. Maria was gone. The whispers were still there, like an echo in my head. They knew her name. And that abomination, it had her face. And those lights, it had controlled the lights. This wasn't just a disease. It was something else. Something intelligent. Something that could mock. Something that could smile. And it was in Maria's photo. God. Later, much later, when the world outside was just a dark, silent expanse, I pulled the truck into a clearing, a small patch of dirt surrounded by dead trees. The engine coughed once, twice, then died. We wouldn't be moving tonight. I sat there in the driver's seat, paralyzed. The cold knot in my stomach had spread, filled my chest. I felt sick, guilt, regret, a deep, bone-weary despair settling in. I wasn't sure what I'd seen, what I'd heard. Nothing made sense anymore. I fumbled for the internal security camera, flicked it on. The small monitor glowed, a faint greenish light in the dark cab. I checked the cargo hold. Empty bunks. And then I saw him, Ben, curled up in his bunk, asleep, or, at least, I thought he was. But just for a fraction of a second, I saw it. His lips, they curled into a smirk, just for a moment.